Ben Simmons fits. This was a rough, as I said on my podcast on Tuesday, a rough 24 hours on social media for Ben Simmons. I would say it was about as rough as I think I've ever seen for a player for just a game. But there is a market for him, and the market will grow. It will be stronger. I don't know if Daryl, this is, I think, Daryl 101 right now, telling everybody, hey, we'd like to make this work. I'm sure he's telling Doc Rivers, your message needs to be, we're going to make it work with Ben. All right. Not that we're giving this guy away. It's a strategy. But if he were traded, a couple of the teams that come up all the time, like Portland comes up all the time because of CJ McCollum, and everybody wanted to break that up because it hasn't worked. Would Ben make sense because now you're taking Lillard away from the basketball? Not all the time, but some of the time, because it's not like Ben spaces the floor for you.
Yeah, I think he would make sense for Portland because he'd mostly be taking the ball away in transition. And that could help alleviate some pressure off of Damian Lillard to have to create, in those early offense sets. But for it to work, it could make sense for him to be an outlet. We saw in the playoffs, not just this year, the entire season, past playoff runs with Portland, he's going to get blitzed and trapped a lot. And oftentimes he wouldn't have an outlet, a guy that a team would worry about in the open floor creating or scoring. I think if Ben Simmons in Portland were to fully embrace being like a Draymond style player, he could really thrive. And that's how he could create in those half court sets. If he's that threat as an outlet for Damian Lillard in the pick and roll to give the ball to, short roll, picking apart the defense or driving to the rim, I think the balance could work there in a playoff setting. Absolutely. And I don't think he'd have to be, and I don't think he should be the primary guy. That's Damian Lillard, and it should stay that way if it were to happen.
What do you think of the package of 7-14 and Wiggins from Golden State for Simmons? Now, my first reservation when I thought about it was, could you really have Draymond and Simmons play together? Because, it always scared me when I saw Houston defend Durant, Clay, and Curry with 5 guys in the playoffs. They just said, screw it. We're not going to guard the other 2 guys. And it almost worked.
Yeah.
If you had Clay and Steph, you'd need some kind of third scorer that you felt really good about. The only way I could argue it is you'd feel like price-wise, hey, we got off a Wiggins contract. Ben's contract's rough, 147 to the next 4. But it might be the perfect transition of a year with him and Draymond together. And then maybe it's a Draymond move a little bit later on. And now Ben Simmons is your switching 4-5. And it doesn't matter that he doesn't really hurt you offensively as far as spacing the floor. That's where it might make sense. But with Draymond and Simmons on the floor closing playoff games together, that's where it scares me.
I think you nailed it there. I mean, it sort of touches on what we mentioned earlier with the idea of fit, with how you want to build out your team. If the plan in terms of fit is about like a 3-5 year plan, at some point you're moving Draymond, perfect. Like it makes total sense. But like right now, in a playoff setting, having Ben Simmons, no guarantee he'll improve his jump shot. Draymond Green does not shoot well, has never shot well besides the one season. I don't love the idea of how teams are going to defend that if you're Golden State. I would worry significantly about the lack of spacing that you would have. I think Draymond and Simmons would kind of cancel each other out. I just mentioned how Simmons could help Damian Lillard on the short roll. You can't have Draymond doing that and then Ben Simmons like standing, near the rim. Or vice versa. Like nobody is threatened by either of those guys behind the arc. So I like the idea of it for like the next 3 to 5 years, but I don't like the idea of it for just this coming season. And that's a difficult balance here for the Warriors, whether or not they keep those picks. I mean, like it's going to be really interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, they can't just trade him because it makes sense. Hey, we got to go ahead and trade these guys for vets. Which vets are available? Which ones make sense? And then you still have the Wiseman piece, who I still have high hopes for. I just do. I think he was held to a different standard as a rookie. And it was hard for him because it was a team that had kind of an acceptance level of things that other teams wouldn't have because they just weren't very good teams. So we'll see. But I wouldn't have mentioned Wiseman in any kind of deal with Philly because it just doesn't make any sense for them to have Embiid. Is there one other one before I let you go? Is there another one that you're like, hey, this is one I kind of, as you're screwing around thinking about potential fits for Simmons somewhere else?
How about I don't think Chicago can pull it off, But I love the idea of Chicago on paper before the lottery. I love that. I like the idea as well as Charlotte. I'd love to see LaMelo and Simmons. That would be very exciting to watch. Again, not sure if they can pull it off or have the pieces to pull it off. But if we're speaking theoreticals, those are two teams with lottery picks that stand out to me. But like part of it is, where does Ben Simmons want to go? Where would Clutch be willing to let him go? Like Cleveland theoretically could say, hey, we'll pair him with, Colin Sexton or Darius Garland. It could work great. Does he want to go to Cleveland? I don't know the answer to that yet. I wonder how long his list is in terms of teams that he'd be willing to go to. And even though he's signed and commit to long term, like the team would have to factor that in as well. That makes it tough.
Yeah, it does. It does. And if there's one thing that I'm looking at if I'm Philly is like I need somebody that can create a little bit on his own. And Seth Curry is terrific. There's more to his game than just shooting, but you need kind of a decent sized guard that can drive on the opposite side of Embiid and make you pay a little bit. And that's, I think, the biggest problem. Like we've been over it all. We've all said this stuff for years now, but watching them against Atlanta, it's like, it's crazy is, Tobias Harris can't really put it on the floor for you consistently and get to the hoop. Ben Simmons can't because nobody has to play him up tight. Seth, who I really like, isn't really that guy. I mean, Maxi's like their best hope as a shot-creating ball handler. And that's just a little bit too much for a guy to ask Maxi to get you out of the East.